focus on scholarship opportunities and some sort of top tips on how you can maximise your application to hopefully increase the chances of a successful application. And for some of our scholarships, which may be dependent on looking at your application as a whole, it's contributing to that as well. So this is what we'll be covering in today's session. I'll be providing you first of all with an introduction to the business school and then introducing you to our whole range of courses. I'll pick out a few courses at undergraduate and postgraduate level and talk about those in a bit more detail, including highlighting some potential career opportunities and letting you know how we have tailored those courses specifically to contribute to future careers. We'll then look more generally at career support available from the university and the opportunity for our undergraduate students to do placement years as part of their course as well. After that is when I'll be handing over to Sandeep, who will be taking you through some student stories from some of our previous Essex Business School students from India and talking to you about opportunities for part-time work during your studies, the fees, costs and scholarships associated with studying with us, and then some application and personal statement tips. After that, I'll be answering the question that's probably on lots of your minds at the moment, particularly for students thinking of coming to us in a couple of months' time in October, which is what will our teaching be like this year. So I'll give you the most up-to-date information on that. And then at the end, both myself and Sandeep will be available to answer any questions that you might have for us. So I hope that suits what you're looking for today. I hope you enjoy the session and find it helpful. And as now we've done that, I'll start with the introduction. So there's a couple of pictures on the screen, first of all, to highlight the two different campuses at Essex where the business school is based. So our main home is on the university's Colchester campus, which is out towards the east coast of the UK, but only about an hour from London by train. And it's where we have this rather impressive looking building. We've been teaching here for about 5 years now. It's one of the newer university buildings on the university campus, and it's the UK's first zero carbon business school building. So it meets those environmental credentials and can be seen as a literal interpretation of our mission around sustainable and responsible management. Within the building, we have our winter garden, so lots of live plants inside there. You can see a living roof on top of our main lecture theatre on the left-hand side of the screen, and also, of course, modern teaching spaces, lecture rooms, cafes, student services desks, everything else you may expect, and all the facilities you would need. We also have a presence on the university's South End campus, which is a town-based or city-type based university. So a few different buildings spread around the town make up the university there. The building you can see the students sat in front of in this photo is called the Forum, which is a combined university and public library, as well as a university teaching space as well. We also have our Gateway building just across the road from here, and our student accommodation block and other facilities are just a few minutes walk away as well. So that's where we would be based, but what do we do? Well, I mentioned we have a focus on sustainable and responsible business, and this comes from our mission, which you can see on the slide, as to offer a transformative education and research excellence that has a positive impact on business and society. So there are two main parts then to this mission. The first, you can see we want to be excellent in both the teaching and the research, and particularly for business school degrees, we really recognise that up-to-date current research into what's happening in the business world right now. Think about the number of changes there have been in various industries over the last year as a response to COVID-19. Knowing what's happening out there right now and embedding that kind of up-to-date research in our teaching is really essential, as opposed to teaching business from a textbook that may be 20 or 30 years out of date. So that is our approach there. The second part you can see links in with that overall desire I mentioned to be sustainable and responsible in business. So we want to have this positive impact on business and society. We're the largest department at the University of Essex, but if you compare us to many business schools around the world, you'd probably describe us as being small to medium sized. This is a really nice balance to be. By being large on the university's scale, it means that we have lots of investment available for the business school. We have dedicated facilities and buildings like the Colchester building you can see on the screen now. But at the same time, by being small to medium compared to a global scale, it means you won't just be a number to us. You feel like one of our community, you'll get to know your teaching staff and they'll get to know you. So it's quite a nice overall size to be at. We're also very international, so you can find the world in one place on our campuses, and our business school in particular is a community full of international researchers, students and entrepreneurs. And as I've already mentioned, our courses and research span across 2 campuses. The education we provide is a rigorous business education, and as I've mentioned, it's informed by real-world expertise. That may come from that upstate research that's being done. It may also be done from some of your faculty, having been working in industry for a number of years before coming into academia. And on some courses, it may also be linked into through things like guest lectures and companies coming in to visit you in classroom and things like that as well. We have a real focus on human relationships and culture within business. So what I mean by this is we don't think about businesses as simply being a collection of equipment within 4 walls in a building. We think far beyond that view of business, and we consider businesses as being a collection of people, as that is so often what they are. And those people have their own relationships in terms of with their families, with the public, between colleagues. So it's really important that we actually think, okay, how do these people interact with each other impact on the culture within that business? And then how does that business's culture impact on what it delivers for its customers, as well as, of course, its other stakeholders? So that is the view we take, that we won't just look at the equipment and the buildings and the processes, we'll look at the people side as well. All of our courses offer some type of capstone project at the end. So at undergraduate level, our capstone project is quite different from sort of a traditional undergraduate dissertation. It's more practical and applied. It gives you a chance to really specialise in an area you'd like to, as well as demonstrating really strong skills that you'll have picked up during your time on the programme. When it gets to master's level, quite often many of our courses have different options for the capstone elements. So sometimes you can choose to do a business plan or a marketing plan or a work-based project instead of the traditional dissertation options. So you'll always have that one project that will summarise the end of your course, but potentially different options and very often quite applied practical. Whatever course you take with us, you'll be underpinned by strong quantitative skills and responsible management principles. So even if you're doing one of the really people-focused subjects, something a bit more like a marketing type subject, for example, we will still have strong focus on data analytics. So using, for example, marketing data will be part of many of our marketing programs. On the flip side of that, what you might think of as a really numbers-focused subject, like accounting or finance, will still have a look at the people side and the responsible management elements. So whichever one of those 2 potentially contrasting areas you do, you'll pick up on both these areas of skills and study. And overall, we can describe all of this as aiming to teach leadership with integrity. So we want to have leaders who, yes, want to do things that are good for the environment, good for people, good for society. That's part of integrity. But also part of integrity is having the knowledge and this data skills and things like that to back up what they're doing and to make solid, trusted business decisions. So as I mentioned, I'm now going to run through our course offering for you, and then I'll pick out some of those courses and highlight the potential career aspects from those. All of our courses fit within our 6 pillars, and you can see them on the screen now: accounting, finance, management and marketing, organisation studies and human resource management, all of which are on our Colchester campus, and then strategy, operations and entrepreneurship on our Southend campus. The Essex MBA programme, our flagship management programme for business professionals, covers really elements from all of these pillars, and that also is taught at Colchester. So I'm not going to obviously run through every single course we do, but I will list them all on the screen just to give you an idea, and then I'll pick out some of those particular ones we want to mention today. So I've shown you those 6 pillars so far, but what we can do is break them down into 2 broader subject areas. So the first you can see is the management, business and marketing here, and I'm listing now for you our undergraduate degrees. So to pick a couple out here, we have our most, for example, general degrees are probably something like business administration or business management. Those cover all the main different areas within a business, often have quite a lot of scope for picking optional modules and tailoring exactly what you'd like to study. Others are a bit more niche to specific areas, so something like our international business and entrepreneurship. Hopefully, just the name of it alone describes what you'll focus on, but again, you'll have different elements from management, but you'll be doing that with an international viewpoint, and you'll also focus on building entrepreneurial skills as well. And there's also courses that combine with the numbers side, so our accounting and finance can both be combined, for example, with management as well. At postgraduate or master's level, you can see again the list we have here, and this spans from a range of courses that are what we call conversion courses, and you can study these no matter what you've studied previously, or specialist courses that require you to have studied something similar or something relevant before. So our MSc Management Suite, you can see on the top left-hand side, is available as conversion, as is the MBM. And actually, most of the list that's on the left are conversion programs. So you could come from a completely different undergraduate degree to study one of these if you wanted to. We also have some slightly more specialist ones that will require some element of prior subject knowledge or a relevant subject in the past. So our marketing and brand management degree, for example, is designed for people who've studied some marketing content before, and our human resource management and our organisational change management programs are quite specialist in those niche areas and will require a previous understanding in general business and management topics. As I mentioned already, we have our MBA as well, which is completely different to all of those, and it's one of the ones we'll be looking at in a moment. So that's our course offering in management, business and marketing, and I'm just going to pick a couple of those out for you now. The first, and one that's becoming really popular over the past couple of years, particularly often with students from India, is our MSc Business Analytics program. And this is a program that's designed to develop your analytical skills so you can solve complex business problems. So it's not going to be teaching you to be a data scientist or a data analyst. However, it is going to give you skills from that area in the context of what a really successful business manager or leader may well need to know so that you can make your business decisions built in really solid data. So you'll do things like predicting market trends and looking to improve processes. So you'll be using data and interrogating data for those purposes. On this course, you would be learning from academics at the forefront of the big data debate. So we're very involved in lots of research that's happening in big data, and particularly its use by businesses. A number of our academics, for example, contribute in a government-funded research centre that the university is proud to host, which is the Business and Local Government Data Research Centre. So you'll be learning from people involved in centres like that and many other active research projects and communities as well. That really helps with this kind of career-orientated approach to the course, because they know how businesses are using data right now because they're leading the discussion about it, and you'll be able to demonstrate in future job interviews and obviously careers as well exactly how that has benefited you, and that awareness has helped you to be effective in your career. The course is professionally orientated, as I've mentioned, and is designed to lead to careers in a wide variety of areas, but again, all in which you would be making use of data. So the most obvious is you could be a business analyst, clues probably in the name from the course. You can also potentially go into the finance sector. There's particular roles in the finance sector, for example, where you look at the different tendencies in markets and study data in that way. The consulting industry is increasingly open to people coming from business analytics background as well, as people rely on consulting organisations to bring that kind of data skill into their own organisations. There's also potentially a lot of work available in sales and marketing analysis related roles. That's an industry that is a very creative industry, but that is beginning to need to rely more and more on data for large parts of the way that marketing is now done. And finally, you could have a general data exploration role in all types of organisations. So whether we're talking huge multinational companies, small local enterprises, things even like NGOs, charities and things like that, all of those are starting now more and more to collect data, to realise the value in that data, and to want people on their team who are able to use that data effectively for the business's own interests. I mentioned I'd also tell you a bit more about the MBA. So this program is like none of our other master's programs in that it is a program for existing business professionals. So you'll need to meet our 3 years work experience requirement post-graduation to do the MBA. And typically the average is much higher than that, perhaps somewhere between around 6 and 10 years experience could be an average in the cohort, although that does vary from year to year. On that program, we're very engaged with business. This includes things like guest speakers, company visits, business simulation exercises and games, and also in the way our curriculum is developed. So the people who develop the curriculum on the MBA work really closely with a board of advisors of the business school, helping them to shape the way we develop that curriculum. The programme is also very closely linked with the Essex Startup Service, which is part of our Innovation Centre on our Colchester campus, but that offers its services across both campuses as well. So for the Essex MBA, you'll have opportunities like all of our students at undergraduate and postgraduate level to get really involved with building entrepreneurial skills, to looking at plans for startup businesses. And then on top of that, there's extra sessions for MBA students from that service as well. The MBA is a good example of what I mentioned earlier, that often when you get to the capstone element of the programme, there's various different options you can pick. So you do have the option of doing a business plan or a consultancy project at the end of your MBA. So giving you an opportunity to really apply everything you've learned during your modules on the programme to a real business scenario, and you'll be really evident when you take that out into the world afterwards. If you're looking to start your own business, you can create a business plan for that actual business idea and then use that in the future. Or by doing a consultancy project, you could work alongside usually a local or regional company close to campus who have some sort of opportunity or issue or challenge they'd like you to explore. And you act as if you're their consultant, you'll do research, give them recommendations and write up an academic report on that as well. Finally, there's dedicated MBA careers workshops taking place on the MBA, which will also be able to take advantage of, designed to help each individual student meet their own individual career or entrepreneurial ambitions and goals for the future. It's also worth mentioning the course is AMBER accredited by the Association of MBAs, putting Essex Business School into the top 2% of business schools around the world. That's AMBER's definition of who they choose to accredit. And therefore you can be really assured of the quality of the programme and its links in with employment prospects and industry from looking at that AMBER accreditation stamp. So moving on now to the second area of courses we have is our widely termed accounting, finance and banking courses. And you can see the undergraduate options listed on the screen for you now. So there are options here in accounting or finance as just the basic courses, but you can also combine them together. Or as we saw earlier, you can combine these with a study of management as well. Moving on to postgraduate level, most of our courses here are the specialist courses. So generally, if you want to do accounting or finance at master's level, you'll need to have studied either the same subject or something relevant before. By something relevant, often, for example, an economics degree is a very good lead into finance, as are many engineering degrees, but you would need to have studied something in that kind of relevant group. You can do general courses in finance or finance and management, but you can also do really specialist ones. So finance and data analytics, finance and global trading, and our new FinTech financial technology course as well. The two final courses on the right-hand side, the MSc International Banking, Accounting and Banking, or the MSc Accounting and Financial Management, are both available as what we call semi-conversion programs. So you will need to have done numerate disciplines before, and there may be some module requirements, but generally it's quite open compared to the other courses you can see within this group. So the one I want to pick out from here is our MSc Financial Technology Finance programme, which is one of our newest master's courses we offer in the business school. And this is part of a suite of fintech courses the university now offers. And all three of them give you the option or the opportunity to benefit from the specialist expertise of three different departments at the university. So the business school, just one of three departments that contributing to this programme, but by choosing the finance variant, you'll be more specialised in that area. You'll be taught by academics who run research centres or are involved in research centres that have an established international reputation. So a couple of examples here, the Essex Finance Centre and the Essex Centre for Macro and Financial Econometrics are two centres that many of the staff on this course are involved in. It's quickly relevant for this kind of careers focused presentation because it's a course where, again, we have really strong industry engagement. So it's been developed around giving the needs of what the fintech industry is looking for in its graduates. So we are linked, for example, with our Angels at Essex business investment platform. We also have a number of guest lectures taking place for this programme. If anyone on this session today is already an offer holder for this programme, you may have been invited to a webinar we hosted a couple of months ago where we actually had a member of industry come in and speak to you about why he thinks this course is perfect for leading into that industry. We also consider a number of business cases, and we offer the opportunity to engage through various events, forums, guest speakers and things like that with industry or business figures as well. On this course and on all of our finance courses, you will have access to our Bloomberg trading floor, and it's likely to be an integral part of some elements of the course. So in some modules or perhaps in your final project, you may use our Bloomberg trading floor and the associated data in order to contribute to that learning. It is actually available to all students on our Colchester campus. So even if you're doing, for example, our management and marketing degree, you would have an introduction to using Bloomberg in your first year. But in terms of it being integrated into the degree, that's more true of our finance programmes. The Bloomberg is the industry standard data service that is used within the financial industry, within the big banks and on trading floors. And we also provide you with access to the X-Trader trading simulation software. So you can practice the skills that a trader would use using a version of the software that is actually out there in the industry. And that's a great extra thing to have on your CV as well. So I'm now going to talk to you briefly around career support and the placement opportunities we offer. So first of all, I just want to mention that all of our undergraduate courses have placement years available as options. You can see one of our students standing near here, who will be featured on the video I'll be showing shortly, did her placement at Nissan. This will be an additional year between your second and final years. It's a competitive application process. You'll be competing against other students from Essex and other universities as well in order to secure a placement opportunity, just as you would be for graduate jobs in the real world as well, but with expert support from our student development team, for example, who can help you with CV and application improvement, who can run mock interviews with you, give you coaching sessions and do simulation assessment centre days as well, which are often part of these schemes. Sorry, please bear with me a moment. I think my PowerPoint has just frozen when it was about to load the video, so hopefully the video will come back in just a moment. Okay, there we go. That should load now. We'll just give a couple more seconds, and then if unfortunately this won't load, what we can do is ask for SI UK to send out the link or make it available after the session so you can watch this video separately. Yeah, I think it's starting there.
I did my placement year at Nissan, and it was in their head office for sales and marketing in the north of London. My job title was Network Strategy Assistant, and my role was surrounded around building the strategy of our dealers. I also had a lot of analytical tasks, and one of the main things that I truly enjoyed was preparing the profitability report of our dealers on a monthly basis.
I did my placement year in London at IBM. My role involved business development, sales support, and relationship management.
My placement was at a company called Brand Biology. So we specifically dealt with customer experience and employee engagement, but we were under the title of a management consultancy. My job title was Office and Finance Support. However, within that role, I had several other responsibilities because of the nature of our office. So I was able to work in project coordination, deal with operations, help with the finance, help with media and promotional activities, and so much more.
I did my placement year at GSK and I was based in the London headquarters. My role involved a variety of things. I did a bit of supply chain finance, I did a bit of legal procurement, did a bit of project management, and I think I'd say that's what I enjoyed the most about the role. It was very, very diverse and there was lots of different things to get involved in.
I found the process of applying to my placement quite long and challenging, as it included first a CV and covering letter, followed by online tests, and then an interview, a phone interview, as well as an assessment center, which is a day where the employer will assess you and see if you're a good fit for the organization. And this was followed by a one-to-one interview with a manager, which would be my direct manager once I start at IBM.
The process of applying for my placement initially was quite tough because I'd never I'd never made such applications of this nature before. However, with the support of the university and also just learning how to set aside time every week and be a bit more disciplined and put a bit more effort into it, ultimately it worked out for my good because now I'm more prepared and equipped for the graduation scheme application process.
I found the process of applying to placement quite tedious. It is hard work, but it is well worth it. Myself, I applied to over 50 placements, and GSK is the one that I finally secured, and I got that by mid-April of my second year.
Coming back to university, I thought the transition was going to be smoother than it actually was. It kind of was a shock to the system, having to deal with deadlines again and having to revise for tests, but ultimately just with a bit of focus and determination and also using the support at university, the transition, I think I'm back in my rhythm now.
So my top tips for placement is 1, be tactical, don't apply to as many placements as I did. Be sure to not spread yourself too thinly and make sure every application that you do is well thought out.
Don't leave it to the last minute. Make sure you get your applications done before the course gets on top of you. So before everything gets hectic, make sure you apply within the first few months of first time.
My plans after graduation for now are to apply for graduate schemes and hopefully secure a good graduate role in London.
After graduation, I'm going to enjoy summer, and then once September comes around, I'll be going back to London to work for IBM as a graduate business consultant.
After graduation, initially I wanted to train to be an accountant and do my ACA. However, after working within a management consultancy, I realized that was probably the industry that was more suited towards my skills. So now I'm beginning to apply for graduate schemes in EY, Deloitte and other top 50 consultancy companies.
After graduation, I'll be joining JP Morgan on their Global Finance and Business Analyst program, and I'll be based in London starting September.
Okay, sorry about the issues with that loading, but I hope you found that video useful to hear from some of our previous students about their placement opportunities. So moving on now to other ways we support your careers from the business school and the university. One of the things I want to tell you about is our Successful Futures Conference, which is our annual EBS careers event. At that event, we hear from speakers from a wide range of organisations with lots of different varied business backgrounds. So that gives you an opportunity to really network with them, to engage, and to also stay up to date with industry changes. So each year, the theme of the conference, it's not just general employability and careers, it picks up a different theme each year. And for example, in one previous years, it was all on technological change and disruption, and on another year focused on sustainability in business. So topics that are really sort of at the forefront of changes that are happening in industry now. You can also meet and be inspired by lots of our alumni, as typically some of our guest speakers at the conference will be our alumni coming back to tell you about their careers. And as I mentioned already, networking opportunities as well. The final thing to mention is that our student development team at the university offer lots of different careers advice and information as well. They are the careers experts are part of that wider development team and can offer so much in terms of helping with applications, for example, CV application and interview guidance. I mentioned that earlier in relation to placements, but that applies to placements during your degree, but also graduate jobs when you finish your degree as well, and is available as support to both undergraduate and postgraduate students. Oh, hang on. I've just lost PowerPoint again. Bear with me one moment. I'm just going to reopen it and share back from where we were. We go, you should have that back now. So yes, the student development team, as well as offering all that support, also run a career mentoring program that you can be supported through. Our student development team also do our Big Essex Award. So this recognises extracurricular activities and voluntary activities you may carry out and gives you recognition you can add on your CV to recognise that you've done those. And also, as I mentioned earlier, the Essex Startup Service, they provide support with potentially starting your own business, and they're linked in with support from the student development team as well. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to hand over to Sandeep, who will be taking you first of all through some of our student stories from our previous ES graduates.
Neil, thank you very much for that really interesting presentation, and especially, the last bit and the wonderful video, and the last bit about, students and the kind of options which are available to them. I understand that a lot of you on this webinar must be students from South Asia and India, of course. And those of you who are offer holders, it's natural for you to be really curious about understanding what have been the past stories. So well, I'd like to share some stories with you. Well, the first one is Vinita Suri. Vinita essentially came to us to study her MBA in 2012. She started with a bank in India. She came to us with a lot of experience from banking industry when she applied to us. So she's working with HDFC. After she graduated, she worked in the UK for a while. She picked up some internships, but then she was back in India and she worked with Citibank in 2014. She currently lives in London, so she's the person responsible who manages the Barclays account. She works for Visa, and she's at a senior position. So I understand that a lot of students want to identify with graduates and alumni who've done the similar courses in the past, and therefore it kind of links up with what your destination could be like. Vinita, of course, graduated in 2012, and that was a while ago. But what I wanted to demonstrate by essentially sharing her journey was that there's someone who essentially did our MBA, did that in the UK, came back to India, worked in India at a senior position, and now sort of wanted to have an international exposure at a later stage of her life, and then kind of shifted back to England. So that's a really interesting journey, which kind of demonstrates that our students who study the MBA are global citizens, and you can sort of really switch between international destinations. My next profile is Soumya. And why I wanted to share Soumya's profile with you is because, again, to demonstrate how a graduate or an alumni from the MSc Finance and Business Economics of 2015 essentially graduated, came back to India, because that's where she wanted to sort of start her career in global asset management. She's been here. She's been very successful. She's currently the specialist. She's a senior research analyst at Aegon Zender, which is a executive search firm, and she works in Gurgaon. Again, a demonstration of how the Essex degrees are recognized all across the world, and especially in India. My next profile is Parina. Another really interesting profile. Parina, met us in 2020. She essentially applied for the Essex MBA, and she was a recipient of the prestigious Dean's Award. What she essentially applied for was the Shark Tank Scholarship. This is a competition which we've done in the past, where students essentially participate with a business pitch, and we give them scholarships in return of their business idea. Parina was a winner of Shark Tank in 2020. She received a 50% tuition fee discount. This again is a fantastic demonstration of the fact that the MBA at Essex is essentially really open to all kinds of students, because she came from a senior sort of brand management profile, where she'd worked and represented brands like Lamborghini, New Balance, Asics, so a lot of sort of international brands. And from there, and having worked in sort of this profile for about 5 years, she came for the Essex MBA and got a fantastic scholarship, and is doing really well in life. Our reason for essentially talking about these students again is to demonstrate to our Indian applicants and students who are on this webinar that you've got to really choose what you want to do. The university is not essentially going to pick the jobs for you. You've got to come with a very with a very specific specialization in mind, but with also the openness to accept where that kind of course takes you. And return on investment is something which I really wanted to sort of touch base on, because a lot of all these years of Neil being in India and us doing really interesting events across India, we've come across students often asking us about the return on investment of a particular degree, be it the MBA or be it the sort of finance and management course, or any of the other courses in the business school. The return on investment for all of these sort of profiles, which I've shared in the past, the return on investment as such is different, right? For someone, it can come within 3 years. For someone, it could take 5 years. For someone, it could mean an immediate return by way of the quality of work that they're doing. So next slide, please. I wanted to also talk about part-time work opportunities. As Neil has mentioned in the past, that students, when they reach England, they are able to work 20 hours per week and 40 hours during their sort of vacations. So there is a lot of potential for part-time work, and there are a lot of queries which I'm often asked about the same. So what do you do if you are looking for part-time work opportunities? You can work on campus as a front runner. So front runner internship opportunity schemes are available. They're advertised on the website. So of course you can apply for these. You can apply to be a student ambassador. You can work with the student union, and most of these jobs will pay you. So these are paid work opportunities on campus. You've got to make sure that you do not sort of stretch the limit beyond 20 hours. You could, of course, work off campus in Colchester, Southend. Colchester and Southend, both our campuses have, both our campuses are very well connected to sort of the towns, and you can seek part-time opportunities within these towns. And like in a post-COVID environment, I think there's a lot of opportunities for students to do the same. I do want to talk about fees and scholarships. So essentially, when students apply from India, it is very important to understand the kind of costs or the kind of investments that you're making in studying a particular program or studying a particular course. and our fees for our undergraduate course is £17,700, which is roughly, for those of you wondering how much that is in Indian rupees, that is about 17.5 lakhs. For a postgraduate course, it costs roughly about £19,000, which is roughly about 19.5 lakhs. The MBA is £21,000. Living costs, of course. I mean, if you're living in England, and if you're looking at studying either in Colchester or Southend, they might have varied living costs. So if you're living in Colchester, then your living costs could range between £8,500 to £14,000, and that's an average living cost. So it all kind of depends on how students spend and in the kind of expenses you make. This is an average for international students, so it could be slightly higher or slightly lower. For Southend, it is slightly higher than Colchester, so roughly about £11,000 to about £14,000. That is the living cost for an average undergraduate international student. If you're a postgraduate student studying either in Colchester or Southend, your living costs can range between, again, £10,000 to about £18,000. Please also, keep in mind that there will be a different cost of living, which the UK REI will require, for you to show as a part of your visa, and that is completely based on the gov.uk website, which of course your agents or SIUK or we can share, and that could be slightly lower than the kind of average living costs that we've quoted. But again, like I said, these are living costs, and it depends on how you spend your money. Scholarships, of course, the most popular scholarship has been the MBA Dean's Award for us, and we've awarded that either through Shark Tanks or competitions, or everyone who applies for the MBA at Essex is interviewed, and that's when the dean kind of decides on the eligibility of that award. There is also an early bird discount on the MBA, which makes it an extremely popular course to apply for. Apart from the MBA, which requires, as Neil sort of mentioned in the earlier slides, that the MBA requires 3 years of work experience. So if you're a student, wondering, can I do an MBA immediately after finishing my undergrad studies in India, you wouldn't be eligible for it as of now, because what we require is 3 years of full-time post-undergrad work experience. So voluntary experience, or if you're an accountant, so sort of articleships are not included in this. So the best option for you is to apply for our specialized masters, as Neil mentioned. And of course, we've spoken about the kind of master's courses we have. So if you apply for an MSc or a master's within the business school, as an Indian student, you are eligible for a scholarship up to £5,000, and this depends on your grades and your profiles. Is always worth making sure that you're making a complete application. If you're an undergraduate student and if you're applying from India, then you are eligible for a scholarship of up to £4,000 for your first year. This is based on your grades in your grade 12. Next slide, please. I also want to talk about your application and personal statement. So essentially discuss top tips for applying. Now that we are sort of almost at the end of July, it is really important that students are able to essentially make sure, write down the key steps, because if you want to still target the October intake, you've got to really hurry up and make an application, and make sure you do not submit an incomplete application or a not so perfect personal statement, because that would mean that your chances for selection would diminish. So making sure that a well-rounded application is put through is of prime importance right now. So application tips, like I said, it is of course firstly important to know the deadlines. At Essex, we guarantee accommodations both to our undergraduate and postgraduate students. So Friday, 20th of August, that is the deadline for undergraduate students. If you'd like to stay and apply for a course, Saturday, the 31st of July is the deadline for a postgraduate student to apply, which is, well, in a week. So essentially really important for students to make a note of that and make sure that your applications for the accommodation comes before this. If you've still not applied for the course, we have time, but I think in the next couple of weeks you should be done with your application if you're serious about coming to us in October. What else is required? Well, as part of your application, we of course require sort of details about, we need a CV so that we can understand what you've done at certain points in life. We want, of course, academic documents. So we would require clear copies of your transcripts. Maybe flip sides of those transcripts are equally important, because often different Indian institutions have different ways in which they look at CGPAs and GPAs. And therefore, it makes it even more important for my admission colleagues to understand what kind of grades and how are they calculated. So do make sure that clear copies of your transcripts are provided. References are again very important part of your application. What are references? These are, of course, if you're applying for an MBA, they would come from an employer. If you're applying for an MSc and your last degree was just completed, so they would come from your institution of study. So I understand these are COVID times and a lot of institutions are closed, or maybe do not work sort of full time, or campuses are not open. So it's worth making sure that you apply for references in advance, since some universities do take time in offering them. But as Neil mentioned, that there are a lot of flexibilities which we've provided for our students in the COVID era, and we can often waive off these references, but well, they're again done on a case-by-case basis. So best to seek references and get in touch with us. What does your email say about you? This is a really interesting point, because I see a lot of people apply to Essex and mention a really, mention an email address or apply with an email address which is 20 years old. So I'll let you think about that point and wonder, what does your email address really say about you? Is this professional enough for making a university application or not? If it isn't, then I would recommend that you change it and apply with a much more professional email address. Thank you, Neil. Next slide, please. Coming to your personal statement, which is a really interesting point and a really interesting part and an important part of your application. The personal statement is one of the main reasons why and how Essex would understand about your profile. As it says, it needs to be personalized. We need to understand about who is applying to us, because there's only one part of you that we can understand through your grades. We do want to understand who is essentially coming and applying to us, and that's the best way to make sure that you talk about yourself through a personal statement. So what does it include? Well, 70% of the personal statement needs to be about the course. So the course that you're applying for, you need to clearly mention why do you want to study this program? Why have you chosen it? You need to also talk about the academic experience and your current studies. You need to make sure that you mention your work or your voluntary experience. So if you're a college student applying for an MSc right after graduation, so do make sure that you talk about your voluntary work, and do make sure that if you've done internships, talk about that. Additional reading. I do not see a lot of Indian undergraduate degrees having additional reading materials or any sort of research work which is given to students. But in case you've done any of that, or if you've got published papers, or if you've attended conferences and have worked on additional research, do mention that. Worth always talking about your career aspirations, really important. So what do you want to do after finishing this degree? Where do you see yourself? Where do you see your career going from, after studying this program? Another top tip is to not really, we know our, we at Essex, we understand, and I think at most British universities, they understand where we stand. So do not quote our rankings back at us. Instead, sort of talk about why do you think you should be chosen for this program. And the rest 30% is about your personality. So the 30% is about your hobbies and your interests and your part-time work. It's also a best sort of part of your statement to talk about your gap years. There are a lot of students who maybe take gaps to study or maybe give certain exams. So worth always talking about that and clarifying that. And what do you hope to get out of the university? So essentially the kind of outcome that you're expecting. And it's best way to connect your hobbies and your part-time work and talk about essentially the outcome that you're looking to achieve from coming to Essex. What else? Well, certain basic do's and don'ts, always worth knowing that. So make sure that you sort of produce several drafts of that statement of purpose. Do not sort of wait for the last sort of moment. Do not write it at the last moment. Do ask your teachers, colleagues, friends for feedback and brainstorm several ideas on paper. Do not use fancy language or humor. Please do not plagiarize, so do not copy from other people. What I've done here is use certain examples to kind of demonstrate. These are personal statements we've received in the past, by the way. So use examples to essentially demonstrate how not to write a personal statement or how to write one. So, well, this is an example of a personal statement. The student sort of starts by writing that I'm a large, hairy guy with a passion for playing and listening rock music. He talks a lot about his music. He talks about his interests, which is filmmaking, reading, so on and so forth. What you would see, and those of you sort of maybe reading it as I am presenting, this is a informal statement of purpose. So please do not try and make jokes. It's a serious application. It's a serious process, and we would want you to be serious as a part of your statement. The student also does not clearly mention the kind of course he's applying for. He says that he's interested in filmmaking, but he's not really talking about which course he's applied for. Loads of extracurricular activities are mentioned. There's a lot of sort of wastage of space. He's talking about irrelevant information. So clearly, this is not a good example of an SOP. So do make some pointers. Yeah. This is, on the other hand, a really good example of what a good personal statement can be like. This is an undergraduate student applying for applying for the course. He's clearly mentioned that. He's clearly starts off by talking about the A levels he's taken. So A levels in history, English language, literature, geography. So very clearly explaining and demonstrating his current studies and how they have influenced his choice. In the second paragraph, he talks about that. Where did this sort of inclination to study this sort of history come from? And he also talks about how did he get to know about the university, which was through an open day, which, I mean, for most of students right now staying and applying from India happen virtually. So on the website you can find links for open days and therefore attend the Essex Open Days and use that as a really good sort of reason for why you got interested in Essex in the first place. Final example, next slide please. Final example of something which is very common, which is either to use highfalutin language which is where you use some, sort of really heavy words. So do not do that. So really good example of how the student hasn't been able to do that. So he kind of lacks vocabulary. So on the other end, he's basically using the same word, which is interest. So he starts off by saying, my interest in linguistics has grown from a list of from the time when he was in 6th grade. He talks about his interests and he talks about how it's interesting and so on and so forth, and how linguistics interests him. So he's used the same word again and again, and that I think is not advisable. So best to kind of get your statement of purpose checked through your English teacher or maybe a friend who's good in English, so that better vocabulary can be used. The student does talk about sort of his work experience in Spain, his motivation, talks about transferable skills, which is good. So that is, a bit you can always use. Well, and with that, I would like to sort of move on to the blended learning. Next slide, please.
Do you want me to take over for this bit, Sandeep, so I can give them more EBS specific information?
Yes, please, Neil. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. So yeah, I think it's important to try and give you an update of what our teaching plans are for next year, as I'm sure that's a question on many of your minds at the moment. So I think, first of all, what I'll do is try and give you a flavour of what's happened for the previous year, and some of that you may have heard about from other people already, but other bits you might not exactly understand how it's been delivered. And then I'll go on from there to talking from the business school's perspective about how we're expecting next year to take place. So first of all, to last year, all of our courses for last year were planned to be delivered through blended delivery, which was designed to be a mixture of online and, where government guidelines allowed, face-to-face in-person tutorials and lectures. However, as a result of a series of UK-wide lockdowns, the one of which from January to May was a particularly long one, implemented by the UK government, did mean that we were forced to move all teaching for most courses online for at least that period of time. So therefore, this year on many courses, only small amounts of teaching have been face-to-face. However, we've still given our students a really successful year, and we've made use of all of our technology that's available to us, as well as new and engaging platforms, and have enhanced our virtual learning environment, Moodle, as well, in response to the pandemic, to share lots of things with our students. So on the Moodle site, you can access teaching and lecture recordings. We run discussion boards. You can access extra learning resources, and all of this can really help all of our students, wherever they were studying at the time, to feel involved in the class and to get those opportunities to engage. For October 2021, most of our programmes will continue to be taught in a way that does blend the in-person classes and seminars with some online activity, but we're expecting the balance to be much more towards the in-person classes at this point. So our current expectation is that for all courses, there should be strong elements of the in-person classes, which we know are often really important to our students. The ones that are online are most likely to be the largest lectures, because depending on rules for either distancing or maximum capacities in some of our lecture theatres, we may not be able to do the largest lectures always face-to-face, but those in-person classes and seminars should be taking place in that format. And those are the ones that really lend themselves best to that type of learning environment as well. We'll also have our normal range of different activities, our student support services, our career support, our extracurricular activities. All of those things will be happening in various different formats as well, with lots taking place on our campus for you to enjoy. Of course, the backup plan of fully online teaching will remain in place. So we're very hopeful at the moment that the vaccination programme in the UK should mean that there aren't future UK-wide lockdowns, but if that was to happen, we could move your studies back fully online to ensure your learning isn't interrupted and that you can still graduate and receive your degree award at the standard time, so it's not delaying your overall progress on the programme. So with that update in mind, we're expecting our students to join us on campus for the start of term. We're not an online university and we're not delivering an online degree. However, there will be some elements of flexibility for that arrival date. We know, for example, that things like if there are delays in visa issuing or flight restrictions or quarantine requirements, etc., some students may arrive slightly late, so there will be an initial flexibility at first. However, if you want to continue to study online for a longer period of time, you will need to apply for permission to do that on an individual basis based on your exceptional circumstances. We're mainly expecting those circumstances to be, for example, related to travel restrictions. So if, for example, there were no flights between India and the UK in October when you were due to arrive, then we may well be able to say that's fine, study online. But at the point when flights were starting again and where travel became possible, we would expect students to start joining us at that point. And as I say, beyond a certain cutoff that we will communicate nearer the start of term, you will need to apply individually and specify your own circumstances if you want to study online longer term. So our message at the moment really is, please proceed with things like paying your deposits and moving through to cash issue if you have your unconditional offers accepted with us, and plan that you will arrive at the start of that time, make those necessary arrangements, but just know that there is that flexibility there if circumstances outside of your control stop that happening, at least at the very start of term. We sent quite recently an email to all of our offer holders outlining in more detail what I just said, and that will continue to be sent to any new offer holders who are receive their offers over the next few weeks. So please do look out for that email, as well as future emails that will come from us over the next couple of months with all the latest and up-to-date information. And you can also view the COVID-19 pages on our website as well, where there's a whole section specifically for our applicants with answers to lots of the frequent asked questions that we receive. So I hope that update as we have it so far is helpful for you. If you have any more detailed questions on that or anything else, please do send them in now. So I can see we've already had quite a lot of questions come in. So I'm not sure if either Bhavna from SIUK or Sandeep will be sort of reading through the questions and hosting that. I know both myself and Sandeep will be available to answer them depending on who they're best suited for.
Yeah, Neil. Well, loads of questions coming in, so thank you very much for keeping this engaging. Bear with me while I read out some of these. We've got some generic questions around the MSc marketing, which we covered. So Abhishek. Well, my answer for the MSc marketing would be to essentially go, if you want to understand the course more, we've kind of covered it, but best to maybe take a look at its taster lecture on the website. Anisha Narayan from India asks, what is the criteria for scholarships? And do we need to apply separately for scholarships? Neil, do you want to take that?
Yes, so for most of the undergraduate and standard postgraduate ones, including that academic excellence one that Sandy mentioned, they are specified criteria, so meeting a certain requirement, and we would assess you for those automatically when you apply. If for any reason you think you have met those criteria and that award is not listed on your offer letter, then please do query that with our admissions team and they can double check for you. It could be one of those things like Sandy's saying that GPAs are often calculated differently, so the admissions team may sometimes slightly overlook that. If you're concerned, you think you're eligible and you haven't been given it, then you can ask at that point, but you don't need to make a separate application. For the MBA, we automatically assess all self-funding students for the MBA Dean's Award, but that is awarded on a number of different criteria. So we look at academic background, we look at work experience background, we look at your reasons for doing an MBA, your plans for the future, your reasons for choosing Essex, and what we feel the contribution in the classroom would be. So that will happen as a result of looking at your personal statement, your CV, and your interview as well, is when we'll be assessing you against all of those criteria. And your interview would be either with myself or with the head of the marketing team for the business school, or in some cases the MBA director. So if you have more questions on that, want to put your case forward for a scholarship, you can of course do that during your interview.
Well, next question is from Ankit Singh, who's asking about placement opportunities and part-time jobs. We did cover that as a part of our presentation. If you do want to understand more about graduate destinations, do look at our careers website, and you can find details on our graduate destinations there. The next question is about the admissions timeline. Dhavnit Bimani is asking if we start from September 21 for the intake in September 22. Yes, we do, but you can still apply, Dhavnit, for the September 22. The best time, like I said, it's safe to apply in the next couple of weeks. If you're looking to target the 2020 September 2021 intake. Luda Paul is asking about the new COVID guidelines for international students. Well, India is now in the red zone, so that means students would have to quarantine for a period of 10 days in a government-approved hotel. Neil, do you want to maybe talk about COVID, any special COVID guidelines or changes from EBS point of view?
Yes, I say most of it is in relation to that teaching provision that I've mentioned. So yes, although obviously you'll see in the news like current situation in the UK as it changes, the main highlight for us is that with the success of the vaccination programme in the UK, we're unrestricted in terms of delivering teaching. So we can deliver teaching in our normal fashion. Of course, on top of that, the university puts its own procedures in place. So there are things that are optional and are not required by the government, but that we will do as extras to help ensure the safety of our staff and students. So that, for example, includes things like hand sanitizer around the building. There may still be some elements of distancing. You may still see some screens in use around campus. And as I mentioned before, there's a possibility that some of those larger teaching events will have to continue to be done online. The other thing I think it's worth mentioning, Sandeep said about that if coming from a red list country, the current requirement would be to quarantine for 10 days in a government-approved hotel. The university have committed to reimbursing the costs of that for our students. So assuming you register as a student and do not quickly leave after you start, so assuming you get basically through the first term, you could then apply for a refund of that amount. So although there's not necessarily anything we can do initially to stop that from happening if you are traveling from the red list country, we're really trying to support you to go through that in the best way we can, offer you that option to start, studying flexibly at the start, come to campus, and then once you've been with us a while, we can look to reimburse that cost for you as well. The final point I mentioned on that, because I'm not sure if it may be in later questions or it might not have been asked today, but I've been asked it a lot recently, is around vaccines. So it's currently not a requirement to have had a vaccine before travelling to the UK. So that you don't need to be concerned about. If you haven't yet had a vaccine, you won't be let in. Under the current regulations, that's fine. If that changes, we'll of course communicate that on our website. That would be a government decision if that changed. And our current expectation is that if you're not vaccinated by the time you come to the UK, then as part of paying your health surcharge that you do as part of your visa application, you would be entitled to receive the vaccination on the NHS once you've arrived, and we'll be able to support our students with where to go to make those appointments and to arrange that for you.
Thank you for that really detailed answer. Really sort of answered a lot of questions. I have a really interesting question from Luda Paul, where she's asking, I've heard that British universities need a 10+2+4 degree. What that means is that you essentially study for 12 years in school, and do they need to do a 4-year undergraduate degree? And I do want to answer that and say no, because that is maybe required in the US. The UK education system and the sort of application and the acceptance system is kind of very similar to India, and a 10+2+3 is certainly accepted for an undergraduate, certainly accepted for a postgraduate course in England. we've kind of answered a lot of these questions, and slightly conscious of time. So apologies if I may not cover each and every question, but we've answered a lot of questions as a part of our presentation. I have a question from Abhishek Singh, and he's asking, will he be able to get an unconditional offer if he applies now? And will he be eligible for a scholarship? So, well, your very specific question, do sort of get in touch with us or SI UK. Our email addresses are on your screen, ebs@essex.ac.uk and india@essex.ac.uk, and we can give you feedback on your profile. But for the first part, yes, certainly, applications are open, and we would aim to give you an offer to come and start with us in September 21. One of the things which both Neil and I mentioned were our staggered start. So we understand that India is in the red list, and that could mean that you start at a certain time, and we could stagger the start date. So you could start virtually, or you could start from India and then travel later on, book your quarantine accordingly, and then join the course. In case you're not able to, let's say, get a visa before the 7th of October, which is our 3rd, or the 7th of October, which is our start date. Well, that's it. I do not see any more questions. Neil, do you have any final signing off notes? Any final words of wisdom?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as Sandeep said, if you're still looking to come for this October, then please do get those applications in as soon as possible. We do have January start dates, but only for a few of our courses. So the MBA, MBM and MSc Business Analytics will be available for January. But other than those, if you want to come, in this academic year, it will be the October intake you should be aiming for. So, proceed as soon as possible if that's what you would like to do. The other thing I'll mention is that we're, of course, really happy to answer any questions that you may have, either ones that are more specific to yourself or your circumstances, or once you've received an offer, any further questions you get there as well. The general message is just keep in touch. We're trying to be as flexible as we can around various different requirements. Sandeep mentioned that earlier when he talked about referencing requirements, but also things like access to official university transcripts or exams being cancelled, all different scenarios like that. We're being as flexible as we can. So please do just speak to the admissions team using the address on your offer letter, or ourselves at EBS or the India on the email addresses you can see there, and we'll aim to support you in any way we can with what obviously your individual circumstances are. And finally, just to say, hopefully I'll see many of you studying at the business school in October. I look forward to seeing you there. Thank you very much also to SI UK for inviting us to deliver this webinar today, and of course to all of you for joining us.
Thank you.